Do your same-sex fraternal twins look very much alike? Have you ever wondered if they are truly fraternal, or perhaps they are identical? Or perhaps you've considered DNA testing, but have reservations about the process or the outcome. Can the new knowledge change the twin relationship? Today, we're talking about DNA zygosity testing for twins. This is Twin Talks.
The ultrasound shows your babies to be healthy.
What? Did you say babies? You're huge. Are you having twins?
Are they natural?
Which one do you like better?
Twins, huh? My neighbor's cousin's brother's uncle's a twin.
So can they read each other's minds?
How do you tell them apart?
Twins? You got a 2-for-1.
Do twins run in your family?
Double trouble. You're not having any more, are you?
At least you're not Octomom.
If you're pregnant with twins, or you're an experienced twin parent, odds are you've heard it all before. Now it's time to hear from the experts. This is Twin Talks, Parenting Times 2. Well, welcome to Twin Talks, broadcasting from the Birth Education Center of San Diego. Twin Talks is your weekly online, on-the-go support group for expecting and new parents of twins. I'm your host, Christine Stewart Fitzgerald. Have you heard about the Twin Talks Club? Our members get bonus content after each new show, plus special giveaways and discounts. Subscribe to our monthly Twin Talks newsletter and learn about the latest episodes available. Another way for you to stay connected is by downloading our free Twin Talks app. It's available in the Android, iTunes, and the Windows Marketplace. Well, let's get started and introduce ourselves. So here in the studio, we have with us today, Sarah. You want to tell us a little bit about you and your family?
Yeah, my name is Sarah Wigdor Roberts. I'm an attorney by trade. I have identical twin boys that I obviously underwent DNA zygosity testing to figure out that they were identical, and they're our only children.
All right. And with us, our producer, Sunny.
Yeah. Hey, guys. So I'm Sunny, and I'm producing today's show. And I have 4 kids of my own. And my oldest is 5. I have a 3-year-old, and both of those are boys. And then I have identical twin girls who are 2. And we knew actually probably 5 minutes after I found out I was pregnant with the girls, they told me they were identical. So I was still really early on. It was about 11 weeks or something like that. So they could really see that they were in the same placenta, sharing the same placenta.
Oh, so they knew early on.
Yeah, they did.
All right. Mm-hmm. And today on the phone with us is Christina Baglivi-Tingloff, and she's the author and the editor of Talk About Twins. So tell us a little bit about your story.
Hi there. Well, I'm a freelance writer and an author, and I've written a couple books on twins, including Parenting School-Age Twins and Multiples and Double Duty. I am the mother of 3 boys, fraternal twins who are in college right down there in San Diego, as well as a singleton who's a senior in high school.
Wow. You're a boy mom. Woo.
Yes,
All right.
All right, so before we kick off our conversation today on DNA testing, I found a news headline. This is one of those stories that's honestly, it's like really, it's an amazing story. It's almost like too hard to believe, like to wrap your head around this. But it had to do with cells and DNA a little bit, so I thought it was a good fit for this episode. So the headline is, Man's Unborn Twin Fathers His Baby. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. Wrap your head around that.
Okay.
So here's what happened. So there was a 34-year-old man, and he learned that he is a rare human chimera, Chimera, which means he absorbed his twin early in the womb. So here's what happened. So this guy and his wife, apparently they live in Washington State, and they conceived their first baby through IVF with the help of a fertility clinic. And then when they learned that their new baby didn't have a blood type that matched either of theirs.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Like, okay, lawsuit?
Scandal. So they thought that the clinic made a mistake, but the clinic, checked everything, and they're like, no, you're the only white male that we did this procedure on that day. So they were trying to figure out what the problem was. And as it turns out, it says an at-home paternity test confirmed their disturbing suspicion that the man was not the baby's father. A second test administered by a lab returned the same unsettling results. And as it turned out, the blood type was actually from his twin that he absorbed. Does that make sense? So,
yes.
Yeah. So I know it's really hard to kind of wrap your head around this. I mean, he didn't even know that he was a twin, right? And in fact, the article actually says that it's believed that 1 in 8 births start as a multiple pregnancy. And as far as this human chimera, I'm just going to pronounce it that way, is concerned, there's only 100 reports of it ever happening. So he didn't know he was a twin.
Very rare.
Very, very rare. And then he goes to have a baby with his wife, and the blood isn't his or his wife's, and they're trying to figure out, and it happens to be his twin that he never knew. I mean, seriously, this is soap opera stuff. Isn't it? It's crazy. It's crazy. And it says everyone's just blown away by it. Like, I'm blown away, again, just reading this article. Geneticists are blown away by this.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
That's weird. No, I mean, I've heard about women carrying like DNA they've had like male DNA because, like I'm just trying to remember how it happened, like breastfeeding mothers, they can get it.
Yeah,
from
we've talked about that. Yeah.
But I've never heard of like a man having DNA from, and
can you imagine
it
comes back and it says that, you're just like, okay, someone made a mistake here. And then that's how you find out that you were a twin?
Oh.
Yeah.
Crazy. So now everyone's going to be thinking about that the rest of the day. How does that happen? I'll post the link on our Facebook page so you guys can check out the article.
Well, we're here today with our twin expert, Christina Baglivi-Tingloff, who has authored several books about twins, and she's here to talk about the DNA testing of twins. So I know you've written a couple articles and blogs, and we've talked about DNA testing. And I think I was on one of your subjects in your article.
I interviewed you for one of my articles.
Yeah, that's how we connected.
Yes.
So I mean, is this idea of having like kind of like a misdiagnosed twin zygosity, does that seem to be common from your experience in talking to families?
Well, they say about 15% of identical twins think they're fraternal. Mm-hmm. So I mean that's pretty sizable, I would say.
Yeah. So that's and I think that now I'm going to guess and kind of going. I mean that there's a lot of misconceptions both from parents and then even the doctors themselves. Right. I don't know, but why does it happen?
I think it starts with the doctor because a lot of doctors are not well versed in twinning and the physiology surrounding it. For instance, when you talk about twins, there are about 25% of identical twins who actually have separate placentas. But some doctors don't realize that, and they think, oh, 2 different placentas, they have to be fraternal. So they tell the moms that and the dads that, and when the twins are born, the parents just accept it and go on with life, and that's how we put so much stock in what our doctor says, and some people just don't go ahead and investigate themselves, that they just take what the doctor says as the truth. But really, the doctor may not be well-versed in what's going on either.
Oh, right. No, exactly. And, I think, just for, our listeners, I think maybe we can take a little refresher course on talking about the different kinds of twins. So we can have because, we hear di, mono, di, and like, wait, what does that all mean? So,
Well, it gets a little confusing, but monozygotic means identical twins and dizygotic means fraternal twins. Mono meaning 1, di meaning 2. So when there's 1 egg fertilized by 1 sperm, that results in a identical twin or a monozygotic twin. 2 eggs, 2 sperms, fraternal or dizygotic. But then it gets complicated because with identical twins, then there are sometimes, as you just pointed out, that normally twins have 2 separate chorions and 2 separate amniotic sacs. And that's the term that we coin dichorionic, diamniotic, and that's the majority of twins. So identical twins as well as fraternal twins. Mm-hmm. But then with identical twins, it can be monochorionic and diamniotic, meaning that the monochorionic twins share the same placenta, but they have 2 amniotic sacs. Mm-hmm. And then the third kind is the monochorionic twins that they share 1 amniotic sac.
Oh,
and
right.
So
and that's very
where the
rare.
Confusion gets with doctors, they don't they're not well versed in this area.
So maybe the doctors are kind of thinking that the majority of identical twins either share an amniotic sac or a placenta.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's not always the case, because some identical twins, the majority of identical twins, I should say, have separate chorions and separate amniotic sacs. I think it's about 25% actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think I've heard it's kind of an evenly split that, something like 40% of all identicals have their own placenta. And then, so then that's the doctors just automatically assume if you have the same placenta, then, you're fraternal.
Well, the thing, the way it was explained to me is that it's really hard to determine what, as far as being in separate sacs or whatever after a certain point. Like the earlier you are in the pregnancy, the easier it is to be able to determine that. So if they write it off in the beginning as, it's fraternal set, and then that's what you're told, and then, before you know it, you're in your third trimester, then it's really hard to tell. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And so a lot of women, especially if you're younger, they don't get into the doctor right away, or if you're not expecting to be pregnant, they don't get to the doctor right away. Whereas myself, I was in the doctor's office at 6 weeks because I was trying to get pregnant. And so you make a very valid point there, that it's much easier to see the division when an ultrasound when you are very early in the pregnancy. And the later in the pregnancy, it's harder to see many things because the twins begin to crowd the womb.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Wow. I know, and I had that experience too. For me, I was at the 8-week, the first appointment. I remember, of course, the ultrasound, and of course, there's 2 in there, and that whole thing. But then I remember, my doctor telling me, there's a really strong, division, talking about the sac. So that must have been early on. So they're, we're 90% sure they're fraternal.
Right. And then, of course, it turned out differently, didn't it?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know. How about Sarah, for you? What was at that initial appointment? I mean, how did they describe it?
Well, I mean, after she said there's 2, I kind of went black. Now, I mean, I just had it with the nurse practitioner, which was my practice's standards. Your first appointment, you did an ultrasound, you had a nurse practitioner. We didn't go into any of the fraternal, identical, anything like that. It was really my curiosity and my Googling, I'm Google educated on this, where I tried figuring out what would be the possibilities. And really, it wasn't until after I found out the genders that I really was curious whether or not I'd have identical or fraternal.
Wow.
Right. And another thing that's interesting too, when in talking about like when the babies come home, identical twins often look very dissimilar when they're born, and then they grow up to look more similar. Whereas fraternal twins, it's the opposite. When fraternal twins are born, they often look a lot more alike, and when they grow up, begin to change. So that, once again, when you bring 2 babies home and you say, well, they look so different, how could they possibly be identical?
Well, that's actually what happened with my boys, is I was stone convinced they were fraternal, because when I had them, we brought them home, we had no problems telling them apart. It was very clearly, this one's this one, this one's that one. And it wasn't until about 6 months that the thought even crossed my mind that they could be identical.
Right.
Yeah. And I kind of the same thing. And of course, we could cheat a little bit, because one of my girls had the little, the stork bite on her abdomen. So, thought, they're different. And I could see the difference in their faces as well. So now I think you raise a really good point that, like, for me, being told that they were fraternal, I just never even considered it. And I had a few people say, well, they look like they're very similar. Are you sure they're not identical? Oh, no. They just look alike.
Right. And then you got so used to it too. And they say one of the deciding factors is that there's usually a questionnaire, and they say one of the questions is, do other people often mistake your twins? And if the answer is yes, you might want to consider DNA testing, because as a parent, you do see the little subtle differences in your twins. So therefore, you wouldn't be so prone to say, oh, they're identical. Whereas other people who don't see your twins so often look at them and go, oh my God, they look so much alike. How can you tell them apart?
No, that's very true. Now, I'm wondering, I have heard sometimes for, I don't know, say higher risk pregnancies, that there have been tests at birth to determine whether the twins are fraternal or identical. So,
blood tests, but I think that's really the best way to tell if twins are identical or fraternal. I don't know if it's standard, though, that they do that at birth. I would think you'd have to ask for it. It's probably an expensive test. But obviously, as they get older, there are those kits on the market now, the DNA test, that you just do a cotton swab on the inside of the baby's mouths. And those are very accurate.
Mm-hmm. Right. No, definitely. And because I think that with the blood test, and that's kind of what led us to do DNA testing, was just we looked at the birth records, and the blood test, it said they're A, and one was A positive, and one it was sort of, I think they were in a hurry and they forgot to put positive negative. But we thought, well, okay, the blood test, or the blood type is the same, so therefore the possibility could be that they may be identical. I mean, obviously, if the blood type was different, then that would eliminate the possibility, of being identical. Yeah. So that was kind of what led us to say, well, we need to kind of think about this.
Well, with mine, my husband and I have the same blood type, so we kind of just bypassed that step, knowing how that would end up.
When we come back, we're going to talk about using the actual DNA testing to determine twin zygosity. Well, welcome back. Today we're talking with Christina Baglivi-Tingloff about DNA testing to determine if twins are identical or fraternal. So I think we mentioned about the new DNA testing. So maybe you can describe a little bit more about, what it is and also why is DNA a determining factor?
Well, don't forget, the science doesn't lie. So the DNA is the determining factor for sure. There are several companies out there that it's very simple. You can, I think it's around $100 to $150. You can order a kit, and it arrives in the mail, and you just basically swab the inside of your baby's mouths, and then you send back the sample, and within 2 weeks you'll get your results. Most companies test for about, I think it's 15 or 16 different
like genetic markers, or
thank you, genetic markers. Those were the words I'm looking for, exactly. And if all of them match, then your twins are identical. Even if one or two don't match up, they're not identical. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty straightforward. There's not a lot of, well, maybe they are. No, it's very definitive.
Wow. And I think, that was kind of what we went through too. We just got the kit, swabbed their mouth and turned it in. And then I think we got an online report within, I think, just over a week. It was pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, I had a very similar experience. Just found a place online, and I just remember we had to do 2 swabs each kid just to make sure you didn't mess up.
Mm-hmm.
And got an email with the results. So it was pretty quick and pretty painless.
And I'm sure very surprising.
What was interesting was that we had opened it up to an online poll for our family and friends as to whether or not they would be identical or fraternal. My husband and I still swore they would be fraternal because we look at them and see the differences. And the vast majority of our family and friends thought they would be identical.
Well, isn't that funny? That's what we were just saying before. Exactly. That's interesting.
So I actually have a question for everyone that had the test done. So besides, and I get this, I totally get this, but besides it being just enormous curiosity factor, were there medical reasons, or what was your reasoning for wanting to know with 100% certainty what your twins were, Christine?
I think for me, I had heard from a number of outside folks, from the local twins club, those who had identical twins of their own. And I think they were some of the ones that really pointed out and said, they really look alike,
right.
and I think it was, I don't know if I'd say it was the curiosity, but I just felt like, okay, this is something we just need to resolve. I just want to know going forward. And I thought, well, there might be some benefit maybe from a health standpoint,
right? Yeah.
That, if we know if one has some propensity for something, then the other one, probably would. So I just thought, let's just solve the question.
Sarah was the same thing?
Yeah, very similar. I mean, a lot of it was curiosity. A lot of it was I wanted an answer when the strangers on the street would say identical or fraternal. I mean, I've actually gotten into verbal arguments when they were really little with people going, no, they're identical. It's like, no, they're fraternal. So I wanted a definitive answer, but, back in my mind, if something health related comes up, I want to already have that answer.
That's smart.
Yeah, yeah. And is that the reasons you saw, Christina, when you've interviewed families for your article?
Absolutely. And people just want to know. And when you think about it, the twins should know. I mean, because we do all this research about our family history and our family roots, and my goodness, the twin bond, whether you're identical or fraternal, that is who you are. That's part of who you are. I would think it would be very important for twins to know one way or the other.
Oh, absolutely. And, I have to say, I think, talking about sort of now that I know that they were about 18 months old when we did the test. And I've wondered, does it change? That was kind of one of the things of what, is it going to change my view of them? I don't know if it's so much change, but I just feel a little bit more informed because I read all these studies about the different twin types and, fraternal and identical. They say, well, in this case, maybe identicals have a more propensity for, something. So I feel like I'm better prepared knowing that
all makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I don't know, in the families you talked to, did you find that they changed their interaction, with the twins or the twins' relationship in any way?
I'm not sure about that, but I just think exactly what you were saying, that parents claim that it was more of like a aha moment, that it all just made sense to them, that all the puzzle pieces were now put together, and they go, oh, well, that's why. So it was just more that it made sense. It just made sense.
Mm-hmm. So we didn't have any families that were maybe either really disappointed that we thought we were fraternal, but we're really not,
I don't think so, because don't forget, too, identical twins are genetically more bonded than fraternal twins. So I'm sure the relationships between the identical twins, it just, once they found out, oh, that's why we're so close. Well, that's why we feel so at ease with each other. That's why, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, no, and I can only imagine that, especially for adult twins, too, as they get to be older, probably be more reassuring for them to know. And I don't know if in your experience, if you talk to adult twins who were tested, because I mean, what DNA testing, it's only been around for, I don't know, not that long.
Well, it's mostly younger twins that I'm in contact with, but on occasion I went to, a couple of years ago, I went to a genetic conference, and it was all about twinning. And one of the doctors was explaining that for years they thought their daughters were fraternal. And he came upon a colleague who was doing some testing of twins for whatever reason. And this second doctor convinced the first doctor to get his daughters tested. And they were in their 20s when they found out that they were identical twins. And he just explained, like everybody else, that it was one of those moments like, okay, well, now it makes sense.
And I think part of it is too, we as parents, like we feel, and I guess we should know our children better than anybody else, right? And this is like you guys were talking about, this is a really big chunk of information that's an unknown or could be an unknown. So if you're supposed to know your child or your children better than anyone else, I would imagine, that this is that missing piece that you're just like, how do I do that if I don't even know what kind of twin they are?
Right.
You know what I mean? So I think a lot of that's just needing to know because we're the parents. We should know this stuff, right?
Should. Yeah, and have that intimate relationship with them.
Yeah. Right.
Now, I will throw out another thing that when we found out they were identical, for me personally, it gave me a sense of reassurance because, my husband and I thought, well, do we want to have more kids? And no, I mean, this is a true story. So I was already the advanced maternal age, right? And I'm thinking, okay, if they were fraternal twins, then what's my chances of having another set of twins?
That's
right?
why Michaela was born, is you
Yes.
found out they were identical.
Exactly.
And you probably were not going to have twins
Well, that's a
again.
good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I
That's
thought,
a
well,
very good point.
yeah, my odds were the same of having, I mean, when you have identical, then it's no higher than anybody else
right.
having identical or having twins. So I thought, okay, I think I'm pretty safe.
So you rolled the dice again.
Yeah.
I did. All right. Well, no, I guess, our last question here, I wanted to think about, no, are there any families that you've talked to who thought about having DNA testing and they decided not to? Like they just didn't want to know. They elected not to.
No, I just think it's one of those things where some families say, we'll get around to it. One of these days, we'll do it. We'll do it. We mean to do it. We want to do it. I come across a lot of that. Because whenever I see twins that look alike in my day-to-day life, I always ask. And if part of me, I'm thinking of a couple of families in particular. I always ask, are you going to test them? Because they kind of look alike. Yeah, we'll get to it one of these days. Some families, it's very important. It's top priority. And other families, they're curious, but for whatever reason, maybe financial, or it's just one of those things that they'll get to it.
Yeah, they'll get to it someday.
That makes sense though, because if they're older and they've already, they have an established life, like what would it really change at that point? You know what I mean? Maybe the medical side of things is, if someone was having a condition and you might want to know that, but if your life is already, I'm thinking of like grown adult,
Right.
twins. Then, it's different than your twins were just born, they had their whole lives ahead of them and you don't know what's going to come their
Right.
way. It's another thing when, half your life is over. That sounds
Right,
horrible.
right.
But you know what I mean? Like you're not a spring chicken anymore,
But I guess I have to wonder though, I mean, as adults, maybe they don't want to change the relationship that they have.
Yeah, that's
maybe
what I'm
they're
saying,
afraid of it, not changing.
or they're happy with whatever
Yeah.
it is. Like why would, knowing if we're fraternal or identical, that wouldn't change anything. So maybe it's just wanting to keep status quo.
Yeah.
They like status quo and they
Could
want to keep
be.
it.
Yeah.
I love how we're speculating on what all these twins. I think they want this. I think they.
There you go. I know. I was thinking about, the story that came out not too long ago. It was in the New York Times where I think Nancy Siegel went to South America and found the two sets of identical twins who had been switched at birth.
Oh God.
Yeah.
And so I think, they're grown. They're in their 20s, and they thought that they had grown up with a fraternal twin their whole lives, or so they thought. And then I don't remember what sparked it, but they found out, I think it was through DNA testing,
Oh my goodness.
that they were not genetically related to the twin that they thought was their brother.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And so then
Found several of those families.
Oh,
that's
gosh.
crazy.
Sad. That's sad.
it is, but they were reunited with their identical brother.
Yeah.
But it was jarring because their lives were so radically different that
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
I think they felt closer to their, let's just say, adoptive family
Yeah.
than they did to their identical twin brother.
Yeah, of course.
So
You don't know that other person.
Yeah.
Really. Yeah, that's crazy.
In the case that you're talking about, I saw that as well, and it was just a mutual friend who said, "Hey,
Yes.
you look like so and so, a friend of mine," and that's how the ball began rolling on that one.
Jeez. Wow. Can you imagine? Oh my goodness.
Thanks so much to Christina and our parents for joining us today. And be sure to visit our episode page on our website for more information about DNA testing, as well as links to additional resources. This conversation continues for members of our Twin Talks Club. And after the show, we'll talk about the decision-making process for families in getting tested. And so for more information about the Twin Talks Club, visit our website, newmommymedia.com.
Okay, so before we wrap up today's show, I do have a twin oops story for you. So as you guys know, those of you who've been listening to our show for a while, we have a segment called Twin Oops where you guys can share your funny twin moments. And I posted something on Facebook for Multiples of America for their club, and I got a bunch of responses, and this one comes from Joanna. So we were talking earlier in the show about, twins, whether they are identical or fraternal, looking a lot alike. So I thought this was a good story from Joanna. Joanna says, my twins are identical, and I wasn't able to tell them apart so much when they were smaller. One time during a nighttime feeding, while I was still half asleep, I dragged myself out of bed to make some bottles. So I came back and the twin started to feed away. Then as one twin was done, I burped him, changed him, and placed him back down in the crib to go back to sleep. Then the other twin starts to wake up and I go grab the other bottle. As I come back, both twins are awake and I grab one and start to feed him. Then a few minutes later, the other twin starts to scream and cry in the crib. And I think to myself, why is he crying? I just fed him. So I get back up and I go and check and I realize that I picked up the same twin that I'd already fed before. You knew where this was going. And I left the other one that hadn't had the bottle in his crib. And then she goes, I was now more awake and I was so mortified and I didn't realize which twin was which. And now that they're 6 months, they have some more smaller differences and she can tell who is who. I've heard stories like this, though, and you're like, because you're so tired, you're sleep deprived anyways.
Oh, yeah.
Honestly, I don't care if they're identicals or fraternals. I would mix up fraternals in the middle of the night that look nothing alike. They're small, tiny things in a crib.
Oh, yeah. You don't have to look at them. They're just, it's a baby. Yeah.
So, Joanna, thanks so much for sending this in. And if you guys have a funny twin oops, please send us a voicemail or you can just go to our website at newmommymedia.com and email us.
Well, that wraps up our show for today. We appreciate you listening to Twin Talks. Don't forget to check out our sister show, Preggy Pals, for expecting parents, our show, The Boob Group, for moms who breastfeed their babies, Parent Savers, your parenting resource on the go, and our newest show, Newbies, for new parents. This is Twin Talks, Parenting Times 2.
This has been a New Mommy Media production. The information and material contained in this episode are presented for educational purposes only. Statements and opinions expressed in this episode are not necessarily those of New Mommy Media and should not be considered facts. While such information and materials are believed to be accurate, it is not intended to replace or substitute for professional medical advice or care, and should not be used for diagnosing or treating healthcare problem or disease or prescribing any medication. If you have questions or concerns regarding your physical or mental health or the health of your baby, please seek assistance from a qualified healthcare provider.
How would you like to have your own show on the New Mommy Media Network? We're expanding our lineup and looking for great content. If you're a business or organization interested in learning more about our co-branded podcasts, visit our website at newmommymedia.com. Hey, mamas! Don't forget to check out Mighty Moms. It's our online community built for new moms just like you. Not only can you connect with other moms, but you can also join us backstage for special mom-only online events. And you'll also be notified when we're recording, so you can join us as a special guest. Visit our website, newmommymedia.com, and click on the Mighty Moms banner. It's free. That's newmommymedia.com. See you there.